joining Timeout with PSOA, where sports officials share their stories to help recruit, train, educate not only sports officials, but players, coaches, administrators, and fans. Through this information, we're going to help make us all better for the game. Thank you for taking time out with PSOA. Sean Johnston here, Omaha, Nebraska. And our topic today is time management. So if you're taking a little break from your workday, a little break from family time, a little break from vacation time, and you're listening to this podcast, you had to find time to listen to this podcast. We do have a special guest today, Justin Pavich, a high school basketball official, college at the JUCO NAIA Division II level. Justin, welcome to the podcast, Time Out with PSOA. If you want to introduce yourself to the audience of not only what you do as a basketball official, but what do you do in life?
Well, first, Sean, thanks for having me, and thanks for what you're doing here with the education part and helping out officiating and growing recruiting. I work for a company in Lincoln. I'm a sales representative. I've done that for 22 years before I started officiating, and that with that comes in some travel for work, which kind of leads us into chatting a little bit about what you brought me on here for, to chat a little bit about. But a little background: I've officiated for 23 years, from all the way up from little kids rec ball to Division II college basketball. So that gives me a little bit of who I am personally. I've got a couple kids, another kid on the way. Kind of leads into a lot of this, of the management piece of putting this all together. So I would say some of those issues that come into play is, you've got events, whether it's a family events, birthday, holidays, kids events, games, things like that. As that kind of comes into play a little bit there, you got to kind of know when to pick and choose what your priorities are going to be. Setting up the dates and availability you can work. So I'll kind of lead into a firsthand experience with you and I. When you're setting your assignments up, you're looking at availabilities on our calendars, and so the big key there is blocking out dates, setting up stuff in advance, way in advance. So you're looking at birthdays and holidays and work parties at this time of year, and saying, "Hey, I'm going to block these days off, and I'm going to block them off Sean's Arbiter account. I'm going to block them off the RefQuest account, which are all multiple spots you're looking at, and saying when and what days you can work, and you're explaining why you can and cannot work on those days. So then I think take the next step of kind of what you mentioned of prioritizing how that's going to work out. So I think first things first, you're blocking off every family event you have, whether Christmas party, Christmas concert. Anything along those days, you're blocking that off in advance and saying, "Hey, listen, I am unavailable to work on these days." And then I think secondly, you're taking a step forward, Sean, and you're going, "All right, I want to have my stuff available for the level that you're working at," which is obviously you being an assigner, you want every official you can to have the opportunity to move up, and every assigner wants their officials to move up. So you're prioritizing after your availability dates are set. You're going into place and saying, "All right, I want to be able to work Division II dates," and you have your Division II calendar open. And those assignments usually come after high school assignments, after the NAIA, JUCO assignments, those type of things. And you laugh because it's a struggle, and as you know, managing all that just alone. So now you've got all your priorities set with family stuff. You put that in place, and then now you're looking at, all right, I'm going to manage my schedule of who I'm going to work for, and what available dates I have. And I think that's kind of where you step in and go, all right, these dates are all available. And then you start kind of managing that together in a way of, all right, Division II, NAIA, junior college, high school, and how those dates are all going to kind of factor in and play in. And you open up your calendar and go, all right, I'm available on XYZ dates. And then you start to accept your dates, which obviously the high school dates are always coming first. You're getting those high school dates in place, and you're putting those in. Then you take it one step farther, contracts. We all take our own personal contracts, places we like to go. Every year, I've got 3 or 4 places I like to go that give you your start in officiating. And I think the next thing I do personally, after you get your family dates blocked off, I go block off my contract dates. I don't take any college dates, any dates from anybody on a contract date that I've signed my name to. And that's just something I've learned over the years, kind of the hard way. If you put your name onto something and tell a school you're going to be there, you need to be there. So that becomes a block on my calendars all the way through. Then I take the next step of working with your high school assigners, and prioritizing that it's pretty simple. You're looking at, one, the opportunity to work games, close to home, so that help kind of manage home life in a way. And then secondly, number of dates that you're working for those officials, or for working for those assigners. And you try to be equal with all those assigners, and you give one assigner a first shot. I've got two high school assigners that get most of my dates. Then obviously you come in behind, at the end of that, but you're setting those things up, and you're never trading high school games for high school games on those. You're just kind of putting stuff in place that, hey, I'm going to work X amount of games for this assigner and X amount of games and this assigner. And as you know, games are played on Fridays and Saturdays. That's the biggest date in high school. Anybody can work some games on Tuesdays and Thursdays. There's not as many games going on. So Fridays and Saturdays become very important to those high school assigners. And you kind of prioritize, who's available. You give those officials, or give those assigners those availability dates, and you go through. And then once you get dates from one, then you go to the next, and they kind of fill in. And then you start working around other stuff where, other officials that have contracts that need help, and work that into place a little bit. So,
we're sitting here talking about just dates.
Yes.
And now we're going to get a little bit deeper. A lot of times our audience, such as players, fans, administrators, and coaches, they literally think, all right, we just show up, we have our 30 dates, we work the game, and then go home and forget about it. But at the end of the day, we do, you stated a little bit, there's travel. You have to talk about registration with NCAA, registration with NAIA, registration with NSAA, registration with PSOA, watching tests, attending meetings, watching videos, and then you got preparation. Whether that's game film of evaluating you, preparation of stretching before a game, reading the rule books, case books, of officials' manuals, and then off season to clinics. You're talking about moving up. You really didn't go into depth, but you have a lot of family obligations. You have a lot of work obligations. How is it from a day-to-day basis where you're working a college game up in Minnesota and you're going to still continue to work, still continue to have a family, and those different parties to want to be around you?
You kind of took a lot of that just for granted. The preparation piece of it and getting all that into play. You just overlook that stuff now. It's just part of what we do. And when you get into details on those type of things, there's hours and hours that go in, and you spend your lunches doing things. You spend evenings, doing things, such as tests, watching videos, the registration stuff. Yeah. I mean, you don't even think about that anymore, but you just named off 5 of them that, I just go, I did do all that type of stuff. But you take time away. I don't think people really understand that, the personal time we put into this for the hour and a half of doing a game, you kind of just take it for granted. I say you just do it. But yeah, you're always taking time away from somebody in that, because there's only so many hours, so many minutes in a day, and that's hard. That's hard on some of those things. But yes, to kind of get back to your question, you do that stuff in the evenings. You do that stuff after hours. You do that. You're taking those tests. You're getting together with people and watching those videos, watching your education videos, and others that put out. The state puts them out. The NCAA puts one out. A couple times a week, once a week for sure. And the NAIA piggybacks off that stuff. And they require you to watch that. There's little clickers now that they know, and you get an email notification saying, yes, you've watched this video. You have to sometimes answer a question. I think kind of off topic will be you get those questionnaires, and it's funny to read the questions that we all get and how we all see a different play. But to the point is, those are all things we're taking our personal time out of to prepare ourselves for a hobby that we really enjoy. But you are managing everything in a way. You're doing it. I do a lot of stuff over lunch now. I'll take my computer back and eat my lunch at work and watch these videos and do the tests and things like that. And that's just kind of something I've gotten in the habit of doing. And then if I got questions, and call your people about those things. With a rules question or a play that's happened. And take it a little farther there. Each year there's new rules and new expectations. New rules, somebody I know got one of those right this week in a pretty big situation, and most people don't even know that stuff. Sean, they don't, and even officials that may have been around for a lot of years that don't pay attention and really put passion into what we're doing, they probably didn't know that. They didn't know that how those situations go, or a new rule is enforced. But that takes time and takes effort from all officials to learn, and you're taking time away to do that stuff. So we kind of beat on the timetable a little bit there, quite a bit. So
one of the things in sports officiating that always happens is changes. Sometimes it's a school that doesn't have transportation, so they have to move the 3:30 tip to a 1 o'clock tip. Sometimes it's weather. It's snowing, so now they can't play Saturday, but they could play Sunday. And sometimes it's life. Hey, my wife's in labor. I can't go officiate. What is it that you do to then communicate how you're going to change your time?
So I'll give a couple of instances on this. This year, opening night had a game in Lincoln, and a school was coming up from Omaha to play in Lincoln, and they had some bus issues. So midday that day, we get an email from the athletic director to our crew saying, "Hey, we're 15 minutes pushback because of travel situations for school." We're all okay. We'll see you 15 minutes later. We get to the venue, and they were just getting going. So officials were all there, and we ended up being delayed about 30 minutes. So a lot of those things, you just roll with the punches. You just kind of go with it in that case. But that happens. People understand that there's a lot of moving parts to this, and we've got to be flexible. It could have been a situation that AD has said. He's had people say, "Well, I'm not staying around." Well, no, that's not what we signed up for. It's a little inconvenience of the 45 minutes later start is not going to hurt us by any means, or the crew. As far as weather, and that happens a lot, especially in Nebraska, situations, ice, but all over the state, think of the teams traveling in Western Nebraska. They travel a lot farther than we do here in Eastern Nebraska. And those officials, they're getting on the road sometimes a couple hours. They don't know if their game's going to go or not, but you have to have the flexibility and be able to communicate. The communication piece is the biggest piece with all that. One, your crew, you have to communicate crew, and the school's athletic directors, administration, who's ever in charge, and then assigners if signers are involved as well. Whether, speaking with other assigners and yourself, weather is always a nightmare, especially now we're kind of getting the time of year where there's no makeup opportunities because you got a little lull here for a week. And so you're pushing off. That gets harder. But communication leads to the biggest piece on that, and flexibility, in my opinion, is key to those things. So,
as we're transitioning to the end of this podcast, the more I stay in officiating, not only as a working official, but also a supervisor and admin of officials, there's a disconnect of veteran officials and new officials. And I would like to consider myself, I'm in the middle of the two. And when I first started officiating, it's not that I was the young generation, the Z generation, the Y generation. It was, I didn't know. And you don't know until you know. So those of you who are listening, we're going to go into tips of do's and don'ts. All right, so I'm going to start with a do. New officials, you have to learn how to say no. You have 5 supervisors. You can't please all 5 at the same time. All right, so what's a big do on your list as a new official so you don't burn bridges either with assigners, coaches, tournament organizers, or partners?
Do pick up the phone and talk to them. And do understand their expectations of you. I think that's the biggest thing. It leads to communication, which we've said that many times already in this short little podcast we're talking. Communicate with Sean Johnson. Communicate with Dick Morrissey. Communicate with Joe Wells, or Brooks Wells, or Rob Kuhneman. Communicate with those guys so they know what's going on with you, and you know what their expectation. I want to know what my your expectation of me is. What do you want from me as an assigner? And you talk about, you're right. You're probably in the middle range now. I feel like I'm in the old range now. I'm in the other side of this. But as a young official, you don't know that unless you have somebody telling you what to do. And even then, you're like, well, Justin Pavich doesn't know what he's doing. Why is he telling me to do that? And a lot of these education podcasts that you have and the meetings that you're having, you're educating young officials, mid-range officials, older officials, not just the young. You're teaching older people how to do things. There's stuff that when I listen to these things and listen to your meetings that I pick up, go, yeah, that makes sense. We need to probably do that. But the biggest do is communicate. And I think with that is, understand your expectation and don't be discouraged when somebody's expectation is, this is the level I have you at. And it's in your mind, not the level that I may feel where I'm at. If that makes any sense. So that's a big do.
All right, here's my big don't. Don't horse trade. And what we mean by horse trading, you already touched on it a little bit. You always want to be working for an assigner who, if you have a high school game, they're going to be able to take you off that high school game to go work a college game. All right. But a lot of young officials, they start at the youth level. All right. Don't trade 5 youth games for 6 youth games.
This is a funny topic. Obviously, you're talking about youth games. Let's just talk about a high school game. I can go work a great game for Joe tomorrow. He's got a great time. He needs somebody tomorrow. I'm working for Dick already. You don't trade. You don't trade from a game that you got for Sean to a game in town for Dick. You don't do that. And I'm using the signers that I work for by name there. You don't. You accept, when you accept the game, you take the game no matter what it might be. And obviously, there's situations where you get out. If you move up to a college game, high school to college is always a move up. No problem with any of that. I think the other issue is any family situation or work situation, you're completely good at that. As an assigner, assigners are great with you. As long as they know what's going on and you give them the right time to do those type of things. So, no, don't trade games. No trade anything, any level. A high school game's a high school game. A youth game's a youth game. Stay the level you're at. If you can move up, always take that opportunity if you can move up to do that.
And then this is going to be the do for me is a lot of the new officials, they want that big game right away. They want that national championship. I want to work the state tournament. You have to tell people what your goals are and then allow them to tell you what you have to do to actually get to those goals. It's not just going to, boom, happen overnight. So what can an official do when they share goals with you and how to use their time wisely to get to a goal?
I think first and foremost, you said set goals. Have some goals, whatever that might be. If it's to work a state tournament or to work just a few extra games to get into shape, there's many things you can do in each goal. There's no small feat there. Set it to what you want to do. I think to lead into that then a little bit is, find a mentor then, and find somebody that's going to have your best interests and care about, how the process of getting to that next level, to accomplish that goal, whether that's to work a conference championship, to work a varsity game, to work, the youth level, to work a JV game, how do I get on Sean's JV list type of thing, and find somebody, that cares enough to invest in you, would be my recommendation to anybody. And who people are, who people that are going to care about what your best interests are, and I guess then develop your goals and have them and share them and ask them the process and build a process with them.
One great thing about sports officiating is being a sports official helps us develop into better human beings in all aspects of life. So those of you who are listening to this podcast, yes, we talked about sports officiating, but really go back, listen to it again, and listen to it as a parent. How are you going to manage your time to accomplish a goal with a spouse, to accomplish a goal with a child? If you have a coworker, a boss, or you are the boss, how are you going to manage your time to help your team, to help your company achieve the goals? Because a lot of stuff, what we just talked about here with time management, can be used in every single aspect of our life as humans. So Justin, thank you for taking time out with PSOA today. Any parting words of wisdom of time management and how it allowed you to be successful where you are in life today?
You set boundaries on when you're doing things, and make sure it's not taking away from anything that you really have to have, whether it's, family time or your job, or, set your regimen. You set a schedule on when and why you're doing this, and, stick to that, find a process and work from that. So.
Well, thank you for taking time out with PSOA today. Hope you come back and visit us again, Justin. Those of you who are listening on the podcast, please visit us again in the future. And you could always look back at our old episodes at our YouTube channel or anywhere where you download your podcasts. Just search Timeout with PSOA. Officials, remember, you're only as good as your last call.
A Hurrdat Sports Network production.